I'm a 49-year-old man, and I've been married to my wife, who is 48 years old, for almost 25 years. We've been together since we were in high school. I always knew I wanted to marry her. We have a 24-year-old daughter. Like any married couple, we've had good times and bad times, but mostly good. My wife is shy and sweet, just like me. But recently, we had a big fight, and she's been acting strange since then. The fight was about something weird, and I don't understand why she got so upset about it. I have a niece who is a little younger than my daughter, around 22 years old. She's the daughter of my older brother, who was 6 years older than me. We were very close growing up. Sadly, my brother passed away 2 years ago in an accident. It was really hard for all of us, especially for my niece, my sister-in-law, and me. For a year after his death, I visited them every weekend with my daughter to check on them. I wanted my wife to come too, but she always had an excuse. So I stopped asking her to come. My wife said she didn't want to intrude on our grief because she wasn't close to my brother, and she would feel awkward and insincere. But I don't think that's a good reason. I didn't push my wife further to join us, but over time, my sister-in-law and I became even closer. I tried to comfort my niece, who was feeling the loss of her father deeply. I felt terrible for her because she was around the same age as my own daughter, and I couldn't imagine how hard it would be for her if I were suddenly gone. So I did my best to support her and be there for her. I think she started to see me as a father figure because recently she asked me to walk her down the aisle at her wedding, which is in 3 weeks. To be honest, I always thought my niece might ask me to walk her down the aisle, and I knew I would say yes without hesitation. It would be an honor, and I believed it's what my late brother would have wanted. So when she asked, I immediately agreed. I assumed my wife would be happy about it too, as she seemed to like my niece. But when I told her, she completely lost it. She started yelling, saying that walking a bride down the aisle is a sacred moment only meant for fathers and daughters, not uncles and nieces. She implied that I was trying to take my brother's place, which I found really hurtful. She even accused me of being selfish and not considering how our own daughter would feel knowing I was walking my niece instead of her. I don't agree with her at all. My wife's sudden outburst was completely unexpected and unlike her usual self. I was so taken aback by her behavior that I didn't know how to respond. I just let her yell at me without defending myself because her words hurt, especially when she accused me of trying to replace my brother. After she finished, I retreated to the guest room and stayed there for a couple of hours. She didn't try to talk to me or apologize, which made me feel even worse. I didn't think any of this was my fault. If she had a problem with my decision, she could have talked to me calmly instead of yelling and making accusations. Although her reaction was extreme, she did raise a valid point about our daughter. She and my niece are close friends, and our daughter was supposed to be her maid of honor at the wedding. I hadn't considered how she might feel about me walking my niece down the aisle before her, despite their friendship. After the fight, once I had calmed down, I decided to check in with my daughter to see how she felt about me walking my niece down the aisle. When I called her, she was excited and said she was glad I agreed. Surprisingly, she already knew about my niece asking me and had given her approval because that's what she thought her uncle would have wanted. I was relieved that my daughter was okay with it, as it showed how close they were, just like my brother and I were. Knowing that my daughter was fine with it reassured me that there was nothing wrong with my decision. My wife's reaction seemed baseless and really hurtful, considering the situation. Feeling frustrated by my wife's reaction, I decided to talk to her about it during dinner. I explained how my daughter was okay with me walking my niece down the aisle, so I planned to go ahead with it. I also mentioned that her comment about me replacing my brother was insensitive, and I expected an apology. However, instead of apologizing, she stuck to her earlier statements, which was shocking. Although she didn't yell this time, we still ended up in a heated argument. Things escalated when she said she would leave me if I walked my niece down the aisle. I was stunned and didn't know how to respond. We haven't spoken for 3 days now because neither of us wants to admit fault. I don't think I did anything wrong. Wanting to walk my niece down the aisle isn't wrong, especially when my daughter doesn't mind it. My wife's argument about it being only for fathers and daughters doesn't hold up, in my opinion. However, I don't want to lose my wife over this. I love her deeply, and these past few days have been tough for both of us. I can't imagine life without her, and I'd be devastated if she left. I'm not sure how we're going to resolve this, but I'm open to any advice or opinions. Am I wrong for wanting to walk my niece down the aisle despite my wife's opposition? Update 1. It's been 5 days since our big fight, and we still haven't spoken to each other. We're both living in the same house, but it feels like there's an invisible barrier between us. Whenever I enter a room, she leaves, and vice versa. It's really tough, and I know she's feeling bad too. I heard her crying in the bedroom last night, and it broke my heart. I wanted to go and comfort her, but I didn't know how to. We've had fights before, but nothing as serious as this. It just really sucks. I'm going to give it one more day, and then I'll talk to her myself. I can't stand this distance and bitterness anymore. I want things to go back to normal between us. Update 2. Today, I planned to talk to my wife, but she surprised me by bringing me breakfast in bed. I was completely stunned after almost 6 days of not speaking to each other. I was still groggy from just waking up, so it was hard to process everything. Her gesture threw me off guard, especially after days of fighting and ignoring each other. She apologized to me for the hurtful remark she made about me wanting to replace my brother. She admitted she regretted saying it as soon as it left her mouth. She explained that she was just so angry that she didn't think things through. When I asked her what exactly she was mad about, she tensed up a bit, and I noticed. She promised to tell me the reason later. She wasn't ready to share the reason with me yet. Clearly, she was embarrassed about it, but I couldn't understand what could be so embarrassing. It must have been something serious. Even though she hadn't told me the reason, she promised she would soon. She explained that she's been carrying this secret for years. I'm really curious about it, and I even tried to convince her to tell me, but she asked me not to pressure her. So, I respected her request and didn't push harder. Despite that, it's been a good day, and I didn't want to ruin it by starting another fight. I'm just glad that my wife and I are talking again. She means everything to me, and I can't imagine life without her by my side. She apologized for threatening to leave me, admitting that she would be miserable without me. We've been together for over 3 decades, which is a very long time. Regardless of her reason, I know I'll forgive her, and she would do the same for me. I understand that some people might not agree with me, but I know my wife better than anyone else. Whatever the reason may be, I'll accept it. All I want is to be with her for the rest of my life, no matter what challenges come our way. That's all that matters to me. Update 3. Hey everyone. It's been 2 days since the last update, and today my wife finally told me the real reason she was so upset about my decision to walk my niece down the aisle. I'm still in shock. I can't believe she kept this secret for over 25 years just to maintain peace within the family. It's crazy. This whole issue wasn't even about my niece or my daughter. It was actually about my sister-in-law. For context, my sister-in-law, my wife, and I all went to the same high school. My wife and I have known each other since middle school and started dating in our freshman year. A few months after my wife and I started dating, she became friends with my sister-in-law. My sister-in-law and I weren't particularly close at first, even though she and my wife were good friends. It was only after she married my brother that she and I became friends. Before that, she was mainly friends with my wife. They were close through college as well, and my sister-in-law was even a bridesmaid at our wedding. That's where she first met my brother. However, after our wedding, my wife started distancing herself from my sister-in-law. The only reason my sister-in-law and I remained involved in each other's lives was because my wife had been friends with her. I don't think I would have kept in touch with my sister-in-law if it weren't for my wife. She's a nice person, but we weren't close back then. My brother married her a year after I married my wife, and 2 years after that, they had their daughter. Given how close my brother and I were, we often tried to organize playdates for our kids. However, my wife never seemed interested in spending time with my brother and his family. We would sometimes argue about it. She always said she was too tired or too busy, but I could tell she was just making excuses to avoid hanging out with them. So I started visiting my brother and his family without my wife, and she would get upset about that too. But sometimes I needed a break, and my daughter loved playing with her cousin. We didn't meet them very often, maybe once or twice every 2 weeks because they lived far away. I never forced my wife to come along since she clearly wasn't interested. When she did join us, she didn't talk much and mostly interacted with me, my brother, or the kids. No matter how hard we tried to make both our wives feel included, it never seemed to work out. My brother and I even tried to get them to tell us why they fell out, but both of them just said they had grown apart. And it was awkward to be around each other. Let's be real, growing apart hardly seems like a genuine reason to completely ignore someone you used to be close with. Especially since my sister-in-law didn't even ask my wife to be her bridesmaid at her wedding. So we knew something was really off. I was certain something had happened around the time of our wedding. However, life got busy. Our kids were growing up, and our responsibilities increased. We stopped seeing each other as often and stopped dwelling on what had happened years ago. We had bigger problems to worry about. But today, I finally learned what caused the tension between my wife and my sister-in-law. As I mentioned earlier, they used to be close friends, but things changed around the time of our wedding. The reason behind that was a couple of days before the wedding, when my wife and her bridesmaids were having a party just for themselves. My sister-in-law got blackout drunk and confessed that she'd been in love with me since sophomore year. She whispered it to my wife, who was horrified, but didn't say anything at the time. My wife tried to dismiss it as a meaningless drunken confession, but the next day my sister-in-law admitted it was true but said she wouldn't act on it. Still, my wife let her be a bridesmaid because they didn't want to raise any questions. They just didn't want the hassle of explaining why my wife had removed her friend from the bridal party. However, things were never the same after that. They pretty much stopped talking. When my sister-in-law started dating my brother, my wife became insecure, believing she was only marrying into the family to be close to me. Unbeknownst to us, they even got into a nasty fight about this a few weeks before my brother's wedding. My wife accused my sister-in-law of marrying my brother just to be near me, as she believed that someone doesn't just get over feelings they had for so long in just a few months, especially when the person they're marrying is 6 years older. However, my sister-in-law insisted she truly loved my brother, and their marriage had nothing to do with the past. The fact that my brother and I looked similar didn't help the situation. That fight essentially ended any hope for reconciliation, and over time, the bitterness between them only grew. My wife never told me any of this because she didn't want to ruin my brother's marriage. She wasn't even sure if my sister-in-law still had feelings for me or not. It didn't feel that way to me either, and I guess my wife also believed that my sister-in-law truly loved my brother. That's why she decided to keep this secret, no matter how insecure she felt whenever she saw me spending time with my sister-in-law. Everything reached a breaking point last week when I told my wife about my decision to walk my niece down the aisle. She was already feeling insecure and jealous because I had been visiting my sister-in-law after my brother's death. But unlike before, instead of it being my brother, my sister-in-law, and me, it was just me and her. Those old ugly feelings resurfaced, and she didn't know how to deal with them anymore. She tried to suppress them like before, but it wasn't as effective. When I came home and told her about walking my niece down the aisle, she couldn't shake the image of me, my sister-in-law, and my niece being one happy family from her mind. She couldn't even tell me the real reason behind her behavior, which was frustrating for her. As a result, she ended up saying things she shouldn't have. She knew I was assuming the responsibility out of love and respect for my brother, not because I reciprocated any feelings my sister-in-law had for me. All those years ago, my wife didn't know how to handle the overwhelming feelings she had built up inside her. These feelings resurfaced when she saw how my brother's passing brought me and my sister-in-law closer together. That was the real reason behind her reaction. I must have been silent for about 10 whole minutes after she finished telling me everything because it was a lot to process all at once. I couldn't even imagine how my wife had kept this huge secret to herself for the past 2 decades. It would have driven me crazy. She didn't want to disrupt my brother's home, so she kept the truth to herself all these years. I'm amazed by the incredible strength it must have taken for her to do that. My wife has always put other people's feelings before her own, and I'm proud to be married to her. When I thanked her for telling me the truth and for keeping the secret for so long, she broke down in my arms. I was there for her while she let herself cry for the first time in ages. I'm grateful that she finally told me everything. I don't care what the reason was, I'll stay with her no matter what. It's been a few hours, and we haven't spoken about it further. I think she's too emotionally drained right now, so I'll leave it for later. Update 4. Hey everyone. So there's just a week left before my niece's wedding, and yes, I am still going to walk her down the aisle. Now that everything's out in the open, my wife told me that she doesn't mind. She spent enough time with my niece herself, and she knows that my niece is a good kid who deserves to have a father figure on her special day. It's definitely what my brother would have wanted, so she's fine with it. As for my sister-in-law, we've decided to let sleeping dogs lie. We're never going to bring up the past, at least not by ourselves. My wife trusts me, and she knows I would never do anything to hurt her. She apologized for what she said in that fit of rage, and now that I know the reason behind her anger, I know better than to hold it against her. She also knows better than to hold my connection with my brother's family against me. I'll still help her and my niece whenever they need it. But that's about it. So, we're okay on that front. This secret is going to stay between us for the rest of our lives, and we know it's all for the best. We've also decided that my wife needs to seek therapy because she tends to bottle up her feelings until she finally snaps over something really insignificant. She's almost 50 now, and I think it's about time we address this because I don't want her to suffer anymore. She needs to understand that she doesn't always have to put on a brave face to face the world. She can be vulnerable, at least with me. I mean, she is sometimes, but usually only when things get too overwhelming. I want her to know that things don't have to reach that breaking point before she tells me about her problems. She agrees with me, and I'm glad we're on the same page here. We're in this for the long haul.